if you're a marketer and you really want to find the leverage, you have to get better at spotting these unicorns and really doubling down on those, or tripling down, or going all in on those few remarkable ideas, and really just ignoring everything else that isn't sticking.
Hello and welcome to another episode of PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Valles. I'm your host. I'm also the co-founder and CEO at Optimizer, a PPC management tool. So for today's episode, we have one of the best known names in digital marketing, Larry Kim. Most people know him from his days at WordStream, a PPC management software. And now he's gone on to another company. He started Customers.ai. And we'll learn much more about what that is and how it fits in with all of the privacy regulations that are changing how we do targeting in a more privacy-centric world. So let's get rolling with another episode of PPC Town Hall. Hey, Larry, nice to see you again.
Hi, Fred. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right. So let's jump into maybe one of the things you're famous for besides WordStream and now Customers.ai. But you're also the wrangler of unicorns in the world of donkeys. You made some statements about unicorns in digital marketing. Can you tell us more about that? Because I think people can learn quite a bit from it.
Sure. It's just a metaphor for truly remarkable campaigns. And just what we were finding was that not just like the 80-20 rule, but like there's like a 97-3 rule where like the vast majority of the value being created from marketing campaigns was attributable to a very, very tiny segment of the effort and ad spend and resources. And we call those I call those unicorns because they're rare and beautiful and amazing creatures. And the punchline was simply if you're a marketer and you really want to find the leverage, you have to get better at spotting these unicorns and really doubling down on those, or tripling down, or going all in on those few remarkable ideas, and really just ignoring everything else that isn't sticking.
Yeah, and unlike the unicorn, the mythical creature, that amazing campaign that 3% of your campaigns that drives 97% of the results that is out there, right? And you looked at a lot of data in your days. So all of this is backed up by that. So that's amazing. And this is really something people should do. Now, you also talked about the delusional donkey syndrome, right? And I think it's about people sort of believing that they're doing the right thing by spending their time on the mediocre things. And to me, that kind of connects to ChatGPT and the generative world. Are we as a marketing culture too focused on doing the same things that we've been doing and wanting to do those again when potentially the machines could actually help us with this? Now, I would argue that the human probably is going to come up with those unicorn ideas, but the machine, generative AI, can give us back the time to think up these unicorns by doing a decent enough job at the donkey stuff. Would you agree with that, or what's your take on Gen AI?
So, donkey delusional syndrome, thank you for bringing that up, Fred. This is just this delusional syndrome suffered by marketers where definition of a good quality campaign for marketing, whether it be content or ads, whatever, it has to do with the level of effort and the fact that it got published or executed on. And unfortunately, this doesn't have the benefit of being true because 97% of these things, it's almost like you didn't do anything at all, like in terms of any objective metrics in terms of engagement or clicks or anything at all. I think your question is like, can AI help us generate these donkeys, and so that we can focus more on the unicorns, or do you think that this is more of like a unicorn generation machine? I think that the unicorn ideas are truly hard to know ahead of time. Like they come along, it's usually something a new kind of it's like a bluebird. You just never know when you're going to get them. And, I don't think AI would be, it's hard to know.
So one of the premises that I put in my first book was the agency that wins is the one that has the best testing process and is fastest at testing and iterating and finding those winners. And maybe that's a little bit towards the point that you're making as well. Like, we don't necessarily know what's going to be the unicorn, right? But the more that we can ideate and quickly test things out and sort of like figure out what the winners are and get rid of the losers, so we stop wasting time on that, so time and resources, that can get us to the unicorns. Because it's true, like, what is going to be a unicorn, what's going to land with consumers, that's sometimes hard to predict, right? I mean,
Oh
you
my
look at
God, I'm always surprised. Like I always think I know. Like I have a feeling like I worked really hard on this. It's going to do well, and it falls flat. It's pretty heartbreaking, honestly. And then the one that I mailed in and spent 15 minutes on, boom, like 10 million views. Pretty frustrating, but
yeah,
I
no,
think
and then so I mean, let's talk about that. I think I personally know that you're sort of a content machine. I think a lot of people were very impressed by your cadence in terms of writing blog posts, and sort of just like helping the industry learn. Now, how do you achieve, or how did you achieve that? Because that was even before generative AI existed. Are you just the kind of guy who doesn't need sleep much? Are you always working? Like, how do you put out hundreds of ideas so that eventually you have enough unicorns to really build a successful business like you did?
look, I think that was a very unique setup where we had tens of thousands of clients, and I was just in a unique position where all of the kind of interesting conundrums or questions like in people's ad accounts would kind of bubble up, and I would get to see some interesting questions in different accounts, and see which was inspiration for a significant number of topics. It would have been hard to come up with those ideas without actual use cases, and I think that was sort of the missing ingredient there.
Yeah, so I mean, that's golden advice there, right? Listen to customers, listen to the audience, and figure out the questions they have, what's not being answered, and have really good answers for those. And it's more than just opinion in that case, right? So it was also the fact that you had tens of thousands of accounts. So it was not only the questions bubbling up from them, but then it was also the data of looking across accounts and figuring out, here's the real answer based on what we're actually seeing in these accounts.
Yeah, I made a kind of an imperative, like, if we're going to write something, it has to have some kind of empirical evidence back behind it, and we should share that. And we were in a unique position there where we just had a lot of client data. So if it was pretty straightforward to anonymize it and publish those observations, which I think it was kind of an unfair advantage, honestly.
Well, but you got to take the advantages that you build, right? And so I think even before you have that unfair advantage of the humongous scale, still by listening to the right questions and diving deep into whatever information is out there and building answers, that builds your following. And so you have more people that you can work with now, and that kind of helps you get to that next level. Because I think when people want to be like Larry, I mean, what's the path, right? There is a path. Clearly, you didn't have tens of thousands of accounts from day one, but you were able to get there. And for anyone that's sort of like maybe with a more nascent business, like, was there something for you with Customers.ai now or with WordStream where it was kind of a tipping point that took you to the next level?
This was a very intentional, deliberate, content strategy that had significant amount of resources, behind it, and it wasn't like just dabbling in publishing stuff on the side. Like it was resourced, and we had a content strategy. So I think that was sort of the tipping point, like when we started really realizing the impact of founder-led content on creating brand biases towards influencing purchasing decisions. And so, like, once we made that connection, that's when things really started to pick up.
Yeah. So, I mean, you made a big bet when you already had the resources. And I would argue that for anyone who's out there as a founder of maybe a smaller organization, people like buying from other people, not necessarily other brands. They like the people behind those brands, which is why even with big brands like Adidas and Nike, oftentimes we know the athletes who are those brands, as opposed to, and that gives us confidence in the brands themselves, right? So there's that connection there. So what you're saying, founder led, could be influencer led. It's people we respect that are associated with brands. And you don't necessarily have to be huge, right? I think in the beginning, if you're just like that amazing marketer and you've tried something new and you're willing to share that with the world, that's going to really kick things off for you.
Just niche down, like pick something very specific, and focus there.
That's a great point. So niche down. So it's not always about going after the high volume. It's about going for that audience where you can be maybe a big fish in a small pond. That's more important than being kind of like a mediocre fit. And again, it's to your unicorn point, right? If you fish in a small pond, it's easier to be the unicorn in that pond. And if you go for the big stage and you level up, then you're probably going to be one of the many, many donkeys that gets mediocre attention and doesn't go anywhere.
Pretty much. So it's like, I don't know, specialize in TikTok ads or first party cookies or something very specific. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what you're up to now and what is your niche that you've gone after?
Sure. So I think this is the biggest opportunity in marketing right now. Field is website identity resolution technologies, as well as remarketing software. So the company is called Customers.ai, and the easiest way to describe it is it's kind of magical. We do a really sophisticated data enrichment of your first party data, of your first party website data, to include the identities and other attributes of the folks that are visiting your website. So this is first party data. This is not like Zoom Info or Apollo, where we're just giving you lists of people who fit your ICP or whatever. What we're doing is we're enriching your website data. Perhaps you're already familiar with how Google Analytics will enrich your website data with geolocation data. So we're able to take that a couple steps further by enriching that with detailed contact and person level attributes, like B2B attributes or B2C attributes. Like B2B attributes would be like, what company do they work for? What's their LinkedIn profile? What's the revenue of that company? What's the website URL for the individual visiting your website? B2C attributes could be things like, are they married? What's their credit score? Do they have children? What's their mailing address? So just being able to provide detailed first party data enrichment, and then to be able to take action for those. For that data that we provide. And one of the most interesting ways that we can, take action on this data as it pertains to the PPC town hall community, I think is in restoring remarketing audience targeting capabilities, which unfortunately, if you haven't gotten the memo, is pretty much 70% dead already, and will be 100% dead by end of the quarter because of the loss of first party cookies. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, exactly. Let's talk more about that, right? So there's the deprecation or the sunset of the third party cookie, which has now actually been just yesterday was announced, and depending on when you're watching this, but it was recently announced by Google that the sunset, which was supposed to be in 2024, is now at the earliest going to be in 2025. So we've been working towards this since 2020. It's now 5 years delayed, and it's driven by marketers. Marketers have found issues and they need better ways to target, and that's kind of where you're coming in, right? But talk a little bit about, like, obviously the reason third-party cookies are going away is because there's privacy concerns. People on the internet don't necessarily understand what data is being collected, where that data is going,
Sure.
how it's being shared by different companies. Now, in your case, Customers.ai, knowing someone's credit score, that obviously comes from a third party, and that is being connected to something the consumer gave to you. How do those permission models work, and how legit is that really in today's very privacy-focused world?
Sure. Let's just take a step back for a minute here, and maybe try to understand, make sure everyone's on the same page for first-party cookies versus first-party data versus third-party data and cookies. First-party is like, this is, your competitive advantage, like your website traffic, etc.
So first-party data would be who comes to your website. If a lot of websites now have that opening screen that says, hey, put in your email so that we can give you a discount on the first order. That is basically step one in terms of building that first-party relationship. Okay, you came to my website, but I didn't know much about you. Now I know at least something that I can start to carry forward as I build more first-party data and maybe start engaging you with newsletters, special offers, other things. But what else fits in that first-party data when you come to the website?
Yeah, it's the data that are in your systems like Google Analytics, Salesforce, MailChimp, HubSpot, like the customer information and interactions that you have with those prospects and customers. Third party, it's like you're just buying or leasing or renting, marketing data from some vendor like ZoomInfo has a directory of marketing people that you can reach out to. Or Google Ads, for example, Facebook Ads has this ability to specify certain interests or behaviors. In this case, you actually don't know who those people are. That targeting is being provided by third-party data, and the mechanism by which they're able to figure out that information is actually the third-party cookie, which was an interesting cookie that allowed for transmission of data across different domains. Okay, whereas the first party cookie, it's kind of it's more limited in scope in terms of being connected between the browser and the business. A third party cookie literally has a third party in that mix, like sitting on the side here, and metaphorically, listening in and able to send data elsewhere. Okay, so hopefully, that kind of sets the stage there. In terms of marketers, PPC marketers in particular, their exposure, what's your exposure to third-party cookies? I'm 99% sure that it's kind of mostly based on your usage of the Facebook pixel or the Google ad pixel, because those are third-party pixels that did a lot of stuff. Okay. And I don't think that most marketers even know what those pixels did. You're probably aware that the Google and Facebook pixels are doing conversion tracking, so phoning home like conversion events, so that those show up in the campaigns and ad groups for attribution purposes. But what you might not know is that there were two other core use cases. One of them was that it was a full-blown identity management resolution system that could identify 50% of your website visitors through the power of a third-party cookie. So, like Fred, you could go visit my website because you're logged into either Facebook or Gmail, and because my website has a pixel on it, the Facebook, Google or Facebook pixel, and using through third-party cookies, we could pick up and say like, hey, that's Fred, and send that back to YouTube ads or send that back to Meta ads, kind of clandestinely, and
that's the whole premise of remarketing is built on that, right? Because it is knowing that I visited this website, I later go to that website. It uses the third-party cookie to say, oh, he was here before, so let's show ads from here on this website.
You got it. So like, how heck is that done? It's using the third-party cookie, which even though Chrome is kind of extending that lifeline by a few more months, like it's been eliminated in Firefox, Safari, all iOS users. so that remarketing signal, remarketing, I think, is like the crown jewel of advertising in terms of like, if you want the highest quality signal for behavioral or interest-based targeting, like remarketing is like, it is that unicorn. It's like, it even like an ad fatigued remarketing audience beats out a brand new, um,
Yeah.
interest-based ad targeting thing. So that loss of signal, which is already at like 70% signal loss, even with Chrome intact, but will go to zero as Chrome kind of goes through with their deprecation plans. I mean, and that's why they're stalling here. It's like, this is so critical.
Yeah.
Okay, this.
Well, that's where
Uh,
the privacy sandboxing comes in, right? So they've been looking for workaround
yeah,
solutions and cohorts and all of those things. But nothing
they're
has come out that really seems to work for everyone. And that's exactly why they're stalling.
So the other thing that these pixels were doing, which I'm not sure that you're aware, if our visitors are aware of, is that not only was it sending that browsing data back to Google for your retargeting, but it was also being sent back and then resold to the tens of millions of advertisers on the Google and Meta platforms, so that they could then do behavioral or interest or demographic based targeting of their ads to
Exactly.
to target the people who are interested in your products and
Yeah, exactly.
services.
And to clarify that, so when you say it was being resold to tens of millions of other advertisers, it was not like there was this shopping cart system or whatever. It was basically, well, you have
That
interest-based
powers.
targeting, right? The interest-based targeting that powers Google making money from higher CPCs and more clicks. That's how they were set. So they were just offering it as a targeting option,
In
which was
market
being
segments, it's all based on the browsing history for Google, and on Facebook, it's the behavioral interest and demographic targeting is that, particularly the behavioral targeting was based on your data being sent home by 10 million Facebook ad pixels or Google ad pixels being sent back to the mothership, and that was a big problem. That like, because that wasn't disclosed. Do you remember reading this disclosure? Like, it wasn't being clearly disclosed, and it was powering like this, multi-hundred-billion-dollar advertising empires, and so GDPR and all these things, like they kind of have a point. Like if you're gonna do that, basically, like someone would browse my site, and because it was in a certain category, then they would start seeing ads from like 100 other advertisers in that category. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So yeah, that can be concerning. Okay, and so that's why Apple's kind of they've made it opt in rather than opt out. Like, you have to specifically opt in to allow these app tracking, and that's why Firefox has made it come out. And you know, does that mean you can't do remarketing and all this stuff anymore? You can, provided that there's kind of two big differences between what we're proposing versus kind of the sins of the past. The first is, let's limit it to a first party context. Okay, so like, we can encrypt your first party website data and send it back, through custom audiences in a way where it's not being like resold, doing all this other crazy stuff that you had no idea was happening. So that's
Well, and let's pause on
significant.
that for a second, right? So the example you gave before was Fred who went to a website and we're going to remarket to him. The first level of privacy is basically saying, well, it's not Fred, but it's this like weird string of
Yeah,
characters
yes, we
that doesn't have
encrypt it.
Fred's name in it. And you can still do remarketing to that identity, but you don't know who sits behind that identity. But then
Exactly.
obviously companies started doing fingerprinting, and they'd use their own third-party connections to figure out, oh, well, this identity seems to probably be Fred because we know from these other places what this person has done, where they've been, and oh, yeah, it's probably Fred. So that kind of didn't work.
The ad remarketing use case, I feel, is like pretty rock solid. Like, there is no GDPR of like, I have a right not to be advertised to on banner ads or in my Facebook app. Like, you can just not use Facebook, or you can just not use YouTube. Like, that's
Mhm.
that, like, we haven't gone that far, you know, even in the most privacy, zealot countries like France or whatever, like no one's proposing that there can be no ads and ad targeting in YouTube or Facebook.
Right, because the alternative is a web for which you have to pay. And we've seen time and again, people do not want to pay for access to most things. And in fact, I believe this is one of the techniques that you use. People don't want to pay for access to news, but there's an exchange of information and permission there, I believe. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. But just completing the thought here, it's just limiting the scope, and the other thing that you need to do is you need to disclose. So the antidote for a lot of these privacy issues, is full disclosure. We're not advocating to clandestinely do remarketing. Like, just put it in your privacy policy, put it in your terms of service, make it very as clear as possible on like what data attributes you're using and where you're sending them to. And you know what? Customers don't mind being marketed to from the brands they know, like, and trust. Okay, we talked about this earlier. They start to perk up a little bit in being a little annoyed when, like, suddenly you're getting all these ads or inquiries from completely unrelated parties. And so this is that's the difference between first and third party data, and we think first party data and first party data enrichment and acting on this in the most intelligent way, in a way that's privacy compliant and limited to a first party context. Like, that's a rock solid use case from a privacy adherence perspective, and that is the way forward. Like the way of like leasing data through ad pixels that were like kind of Trojan horses for behavioral data.
Right.
Like that's the past.
So what you're proposing is not a way to become one of these hundreds of brands in similar categories and start inundating the consumer with ads for competitors, but it's more about you have a first party relationship because somebody's been to your website, but how do we know a little bit more about that first party relationship? Because I mean, you said one of the first party data components that businesses have will be what pages were visited, how long did they visit, what dates did they visit. So it's all the website logs basically. But how do you take that to the next level, right? And you talked about demographics, you talked about
sure. So, the easiest way to like a example, like, I think you're familiar with data enrichment of your website logs to include city, state, country, that kind of information, even language. Like, this is that what I would describe that as a very basic enrichment of your first party website data, and then that's usually doesn't cause
that's because there's a mapping from the IP address of the consumer.
Exactly. So someone out there is doing a good job of maintaining a master file of all the IP addresses and all the households or cities and states, to which those IP addresses are mapped to, and basically, this is just an enrichment, of the first party data, providing additional context. There's nothing, like this.
And I think most consumers would be okay with that, right? Like, listen, IP address to city mapping, that's probably been, but now you mentioned IP to households. Now we start to get into maybe a little bit more of a territory where somebody might be like, oh, wait, my IP address actually tells someone that I live at such and such address.
That's what we do. So we have more sophisticated mappings. It's fairly sophisticated stuff that gets updated, billions of times per day. But we're able to sort of just get a slightly higher resolution view of not for everyone, but for a meaningful fraction of U.S. consumers, to be able to ID those people in a more granular way. And again, this is totally legal. As we it's all about disclosure and fully explaining. Like we have like some sample verbiage that you can use in our terms of service that we ask that you put in your terms of service to describe the use of their marketing
And then there's the service
data
to like the
enrichment.
cookie acceptance policy, because the problem is like privacy policy, terms of service, like these tend to be multi-page legal documents. And the reality is most consumers will not read those. So fine to
Sure,
disclose it, but did they willingly disclose?
sure. So look, if you go like maybe you could do this in post editing. Like if you go to the website Le Monde, okay, this is like you know ground zero for privacy zealots and GDPR loving citizens. Um, a pop-up will appear, and it'll say this website uses marketing trackers, cookies, there's a way to do this in a compliant way. Okay, what they didn't like was that it was nothing was being disclosed, and frankly, I think they had a point. Okay, and this is what I'm trying to say is just look at what they're doing at Le Monde, as an example of all the things that they're loading, and there's if you believe that doing anything in this space is somehow like a privacy violation, well, like I think that's just a self-limiting belief. I think you haven't really spent much time in becoming informed in the space, and I think you have like there's nothing I can do honestly if that but if you spend the time and look into what the core issues are, the kind of the nutshell is that you just have to disclose, and the pop-up is like a higher degree of like in your face disclosure. It's not required. Like there's no law that says like it has to be like this big and this big font and like in your face for 20 seconds.
Right, and
Like
that depends on locality too, right? So in Europe, the GDPR requirements are that certain things are by opt-in only. The United States has fewer regulations around that. So don't take
sure,
Larry's statement as like a global legal advice. Every
sure,
locality will have its own rules and
of
regulations
course,
around it.
of course. But like in general, it's all about disclosure, and we are 100% pro disclosure.
Mhm.
Um, So, we talked a little bit about kind of what it does. Like we provide this data. The impact is nothing short of a complete game changer, Fred. Like in terms of like, oh my God, like CPCs and from ads in 2024, they're not getting any cheaper. They get a little bit more expensive every quarter. And just imagine like if you had the ability to retarget the clickers who kind of expressed interest, but the fish that got away that were kind of on the hook, but like those are your best leads. Like if you have $1 to spend on ads, I would spend it on remarketing, right? Because remarketing compared to, well, search ads, of course, is its own category, but like within these like display categories like YouTube or meta ads, among those display targeting options like retargeting, holy moly, like that, like the engagement rate is 2 to 3 times higher than non-retargeting audiences. Like the click-through rates, and higher click-through rates means lower cost per action, cost per click, and that excitement tends to carry through to a completed purchase or sale, because the people who are more likely to buy from you are the people who've kind of heard of you before, right? And by definition, if you're using retargeting as your targeting method, it means they were recently on your website, which means they're in market for your products and services. And B, it also means they've heard of you, because like how else did they get to your website? So like this is
Well, then I think you're preaching to the choir, right? So most of the listeners here, they understand the value of remarketing, and certainly something we should continue to do. And even if the technology through which we do it changes, use whatever options are being made available to you, whether that's through your platform or through whatever Google and Meta will be putting in place, or do it within the network, right? So like you said, Google owns that data. It is a first-party relationship for them, and they can do things on YouTube, on the display feed, on or the news feed.
Or GDN, you can do power retargeting on GDN. This is data that is has been disappearing since 2018, Fred. Like so, Firefox shut down third-party cookies in 2018. It was followed by Apple in 2019, and they got much more stringent in 2023. Like they started just like ignoring scripts, like ignoring the Facebook script, ignoring the Google scripts, this is signal loss, and so as far as what I would describe this is it's a way of kind of resurrecting that signal in a compliant way, it's just a tremendous impact on ROI. Like people don't realize how much maybe you realize, but like it's hard to see, because the death of this cookie signal wasn't necessarily like episodic. Like it's been kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts over 4 or 5 years. And if you punch in a retargeting audience, like something will run if you have enough volume, but you might not realize that it's 1/5 the size of what your remarketing audience was in 2018. And so our tagline is basically remarket like it's 2018 again. And we think that's very exciting.
So this is all about the issues with targeting, right? Let's talk a little bit about measurement and attribution as some of this data is going away. So my first question would be remarketing, really good ROI, but it is really an ROI that's built on top of SEO efforts, social media efforts, brand efforts, or previous PPC efforts. You're just basically bringing back someone who's already come in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think about valuing that? Like, is it for you an absolute that even though someone else already paid for that, you should go after it again and get the credit for it? Or within an organization, how do you make sure you're not underinvesting in SEO? Like you said, you had a big content organization, but that drives people into your blog articles, and then that becomes your first-party data for remarketing. If you measure everything at the bottom of the funnel and you say, oh, it's remarketing that drove that sale, you would conceivably stop the content effort. That's going to hurt it. So how do you think about measurement and attribution in that manner?
So nobody is suggesting that this becomes like 100% of your marketing budget. Remarketing was just the top defensive marketing channel. So like in terms of like, there's demand creation, which is like the publicity stunts or the podcasts and stuff like this, demand creation, and then there's demand harvesting, and that's like the remarketing ads and the offer pages and the CRO that goes into creating like compelling experiences. Remarketing was just like by far and away the best of the kind of closing vehicles, is it necessary? Absolutely. Like people, believe it or not, people are not, they're busy people. They have other things to do other than just buy your stuff. And sometimes you need to remind them a few times. And that's a very leveraged tactic. Now, you're talking about attribution. Like the other thing that this technology, this website identity technology does is it gives you a really true picture of your sales channels. Okay? Because like we're not just IDing the person once and then sending them back to an ad campaign. We have customer journey capabilities, right? So like we can see that someone came from Pinterest. We can ID them as Fred. We can see that we were then like sent them to an ad audience where they clicked on an ad and came back but didn't convert. And then we can see that, 2 weeks later they came through a Google search and then converted, like a paid Google search. So like this is an identification, kind of a persistent ID, smart ID kind of solution that works across browsers and devices. Like we can kind of recognize that, oh, this is Fred from his phone and this is Fred from his desktop at home. Like that's like we've solved that problem. Again, this is done in a first party context. We're not like licensing that out to your competitors, who sell competing things. It just, I think you can have your cake and eat it too here. Like that this restores the remarketing, and it enables like a level of analytics, that's frankly impossible to do in GA4 right now because of all the stupidity. Like I'm actually not, I don't know how you feel about GA4, but like it's all sampling and like estimated this and estimated that. Like I just can't deal with it. And this is showing you actual user journeys with like names attached to them and seeing like what their journeys were, and you can see all the information. So
yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, it's certainly a big shift, right? Going from having that level of precision and specificity that we have been used to and trained to use, and now all of that becoming sampled and grouped together. So yeah, it is frustrating. I don't love GA4 either. I think a lot of people haven't made the right transition, and then the data in it is also, like you said, sampled. But it is kind of the world we live in, so we have to figure that one out. So good. Well, thank you for sharing some of your thoughts on targeting and measurement and attribution. I do want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions, Larry. So are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So what's something you wished you had known before you got into digital marketing?
I mean, how much time do you have? Like,
Rapid fire. So like, what's give me the concept.
The regret is, there are bigger opportunities out there, even bigger than digital marketing. I just wonder what would have happened if I specialized in something else.
Yeah. Hey, everyone watching, Larry said you're working in the wrong field.
No, marketing is definitely an important field, but like, and there are big companies, but just there's a lot of other big opportunities, like e-commerce, for example, like just starting your own, product, like an Amazon or something.
Well, and I think maybe like looking at our companies, there is a limited audience in B2B marketing. And so you see like super high valuations for consumer-oriented companies that make some really dumb thing, but they get super high valuations.
There you go.
Like, yeah, maybe that would have been easier. Like digital marketing is not easy because the platforms are constantly evolving. And what we're talking about today, tracking technology, third-party cookies, like that means big radical changes in how we operate, how the software works, how your tactics will change. And maybe that's the thing, right? We're always fighting just to keep up when maybe we could have built a stupid little game and gotten millions of users for it and, gotten a different outcome that way.
Yeah, like think of something like Uber, for example. Like really, like how hard is that? Like it's built on the Google Maps API, like you didn't have, like there's just, anyways, I love digital marketing. I'm gonna end my career in it, like to the end here. But okay. You just asked, like, what would you wish, like, just be more intentional about surveying the universe of opportunities. That's all.
That's solid advice. Hey, what's one big PPC myth you might want to debunk?
I actually think that the engagement rate and the quality scores matter a great deal. So I guess, if there's still people who are saying that, what matters is only the CPA, I suppose I would be trying to debunk that.
Oh man, that takes me back a decade, Larry, when you and I kept blogging about quality score. Good old days. But it still matters, right? It's still half of the formula for how you rank on Google, and it's also the thing that influences your discount. So absolutely. What is your favorite AI tool, and how do you use it?
It's ChatGPT, and I use it for synthesizing information. So just whenever you need to not just show the information, but like cross-referencing like this and this and this and combining it. Like ChatGPT seems to do a really good job with that.
Great. With the pivot towards a privacy-focused marketing, what is one important skill that you think new advertisers or marketers should learn to stand out in 2024 and beyond?
Maybe the power of segmentation and user journey. So just being able to capture, legally capture all the available information for these first-party visitors and group and organize them into different segmentations, and then push those different segmentations to different actions, like a TikTok ad or a Google ad or send an email, etc.
Great. Yeah, well, Larry, you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you for sharing some of your insights with the audience. If people want to know more, Customers.ai is your new company. How else should people get a hold of you?
Yeah, here, like LinkedIn is great, or just email me, Larry Kim at Customers.ai.
Great. And if you enjoyed this episode and want to see more of them, please hit the subscribe button and follow us. We do an episode roughly every 2 weeks. Larry, thanks for joining us. Everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.
Thanks, Fred.